Hey everyone! Today we are going to see if we can use real axe fighting techniques in version 0.3 of Half Sword. If you don't know what Half Sword is, it's a game all about using melee weapons to defeat your opponents with realistic physics. Or rather, that's the goal. Since the game is still so early in its development, it's far from perfect, despite still being a very fun game so far. In this video, we're testing whether or not it's possible to use actual techniques from combat manuscripts. Specifically, we're going to be experimenting with moves from Le Jeu de la Hache, a 15th century French manuscript about wielding axes in combat. A link to a PDF of this manuscript will be in the description. Without further ado, let's enter the fray. Page 12 Techniques. We're going to be testing techniques from this manuscript that we can actually see through its images, most of which begin appearing starting from page 12. Let's take a look. Firstly, the top two diagrams on page 12 aren't fully doable in-game. Figure 1A depicts an armored warrior holding a war hammer of some sort with a spike on the end. There is no weapon like this in Half Sword as of making this video, so we'll skip that one. As for figure A3, we can work with that. This image shows what I like to call the baseball swing. Once more, we have no warhammer like polearm in game, so we'll use an axe. Let's see how effective this maneuver is in combat. So, with this hoe-like weapon, which I don't think counts as a true axe, the baseball swing is fairly effective. Continuing to use the hoe-like polearm, we're able to disarm a dual-wielding enemy before knocking them out. Not bad. Against this paddle-wielding foe, even though we don't make contact with the head of our weapon, we still dispatch our adversary with a solid slam to the head. That's the great deal of momentum working in our favor. Even after we pick up a real axe, the same is true. Loss of momentum lets us take out enemies without even needing to hit them with the head of our weapon. Looks like this move is pretty viable IRL as well as in Half Sword. The last image on page 12 is figure A4, which shows an armored warrior seemingly swinging their polearm in what looks like a downward motion. We'll try completely vertical strikes as well as more diagonal ones. We're off to a very promising start with the downward swing. Not only are we able to disarm enemies fairly easily, but we can also deliver devastating blows efficiently and consistently. Next, we essentially one-shot our following foe. After that, we run into a bit of trouble, but despite losing our initial advantage when we take a few hits, we're able to come back and slice off our attacker's hand to seize victory. Such is the potential of vertical bladed strikes. Once more, we get another decisive win with a single attack. You can see this trend repeat throughout our next few encounters. Sadly, against the first boss, who wields a scythe, we get taken out pretty easily. They got a decent hit on us before we can get into range. However, the downward swing is pretty good overall. It's excellent against foes that we outrange, but it is very risky to use against enemies with polearms, similar to real life. On the other side of page 12, we see some more detailed maneuvers. Figure B1 looks to show a fighter parrying their enemy's attack with a downward diagonal swing with their polearm before following up with an upward diagonal strike. Let's see if we can copy this technique. To begin, it's a bit hard to swing as diagonally as we want. In the game's current state, the movement is a bit finicky in that my diagonal swings want to go horizontal or vertical. It's still effective as both horizontal strikes and vertical ones are useful, but, so far, we're not really able to test diagonal swings that well. So far, using this technique is roughly the same as swinging an axe about without precision. With that said, swinging an axe wildly still gets decent results in combat within Half Sword. We managed to take out the first boss by using an approximation of this maneuver, but we feel like it was more due to luck than skill or technique efficiency. As such, we're declaring that this maneuver is not viable in-game, as you can't really pull it off as precisely as you want to in most cases. You might as well be swinging your axe around blindly. Now we've got figure B2 showing us two combatants holding their weapons with a slightly different grip while attacking one another. The alternate grip in half sword is pretty similar to this, so we'll give this maneuver a try. Right off the bat, wow. We're using the hoe-like weapon again, but we're able to completely decapitate an enemy with next to no effort. With an actual axe in hand, we have similar potential against our next foe, and the next one, and the one after that as well. Against the enemy after that, we take some damage due to using the axe in a way that decreases its effective range. We got the win, but not without getting a bit hurt. Sadly, due to that exact reason, we get cut in half when fighting the boss. We simply can't attack before he gets an easy shot at us. In the end, this technique is great if your enemy has gotten too close for you to use normal strikes, but for general combat practices, you're better off saving this maneuver for when you are in such circumstances. Viable, both IRL and in-game, but quite circumstantial. Arguably, the most situational technique we've seen so far, figure B3 shows a warrior with a small buckler in their offhand basically grabbing their enemy's dominant elbow while winding up with a hammer to deliver a strike. We'll give this unorthodox method a shot and see how we fare. Our first attempt at using this technique was very messy. Instead of hooking the enemy's elbow, we parry their weapon with our shield, which is probably a better choice in 99% of combat situations. We defeat our foe, but not in the intended manner. Next, we get another win, but more due to parrying and landing axes than due to truly using this technique. Against the following opponent, we tangle their arm up a bit with our shield, which helped. Not bad. The same thing keeps happening against the other foes we find as well, as when fighting the first boss. Not once were we able to fully employ this technique, which is probably a good thing. As such, we're saying that this move is not really usable in-game, and is likely a bad idea to use in real life. Just use your shield to block. Page 13 Techniques. On page 13, we only have two images, albeit larger ones. The bottom image shows a vertical strike being blocked, but we're already familiar with such techniques. So instead, let's focus on this dishonorable one above. We're going to call this technique the low blow, for the obvious reason. Let's throw codes of conduct into the gutter and see how useful this move is. Our prediction is that we'll die more often than not, by ignoring parrying and blocking to deliver such a crude attack. We were right about our prediction. When we tried this technique, if you want to call it that, it most often led to our death. Having your weapon in a starting position for this move involves having it very low. This means that you won't be able to block incoming attacks, and your strikes, while brutal, won't reach your opponent's vitals or arms in most instances. With anything other than an axe or sword, this technique is almost worthless for dispatching enemies. With an axe, you can sometimes cut off an enemy's leg, or if you miss on the upswing, you'll clip your opponent's stomach, chest, or arms. As such, missing with this technique is better than landing a blow with it. This makes such a maneuver not useful in-game. It can probably be more useful in real life, but only if you surprise your enemy with it. Summary. As it turns out, most of the techniques from Le Jeu de la Hache that are possible to perform in Half Sword are pretty viable in-game. Some are obviously better than others, but conceptually, this demonstrates that Half Sword is very much on the right track with developing their combat mechanics and physics engine. Great job to the developers for that. We look forward to seeing how this fascinating game progresses. With that said, there are other techniques in this manuscript. However, they're all quite similar to things we've already shown you, for the most part. Others are simply not doable in-game, as of yet. In the future, we may revisit this idea with other weapons. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like to let us know, or write a comment to share your thoughts. As always, you're welcome to subscribe if you want to see more of our content. Lastly, if you like written content about video games, consider stopping by our website. The link to it is in the description. Until the next video, keep your guard up, fellow warriors.